Welcome to 2023, a year that promises to be incredibly exciting, especially in the world of literature. I've picked 30 books here that I want to talk about that are coming out at some point in 2023, but because I'm not much of a professional, I haven't ordered these books, I haven't classified them in any way, I haven't even got them in any kind of chronological order, partly because I couldn't be bothered, and partly because my audience is spread all around the world and you're all going to be picking them up from different publishers at different times, so if I tell you the UK publication date, that might not mean much to you, but the real reason is that I couldn't be bothered. So I'm going to move through 30 books, some of which I have with me because I've been sent review copies, others I'm hoping to get my hands on either when they come out or I'll get review copies at some point. But here are 30 books that I'm excited about. Most of them were originally written in English, Spanish, Korean, or Japanese because those are kind of my areas that I love a lot. They're Latin American books, Japanese, Korean, or English language books. This is also not an exhaustive list by any means. There are books that I have missed out for the sake of brevity, books that I don't know about yet. These are just 30 books that I'm excited for, and I think you should be too, so let's crack on. Oh, and one more thing. What I'm going to do is tell you anything I might know about the book, or the author, or the publisher, and then just kind of read you the blurb, because I haven't read any of these books yet. Let's go. First up from the stack that I actually have with me is Hit Parade of Tears. This is a collection of short stories by Japanese author Izumi Suzuki. About 2 years ago, I reviewed her collection of short stories Terminal Boredom. Now, Izumi Suzuki is no longer with us, but it is a wonderful thing that we get to still experience her short stories translated into English. And here we have 4 different translators working on this book. David Boyd, Sam Bett, Daniel Joseph, and Helen O'Horan. All 4 of these translators have worked to bring us more of her stories. Izumi Suzuki was a radical punk and political feminist writer from Japan. Terminal Boredom was an incredible collection of stories that came out in 2021, I think, and we've got more of her stuff coming in April. At least in the UK. This is out in April, and I can't wait. She is radical and powerful and exciting. Here's a book that I was sent a few weeks ago and I don't remember asking for. It's out in January and it sounds really, really good. And since having been sent it, I've seen quite a lot of buzz about it on Twitter and Instagram, etc. This is The Luminaries by Susan Dennard. I actually have a picture of the final cover here on the back, so this is a review copy. And there is no blurb here that I can find at all, so I've got the blurb on my phone. I'm just going to read it out to you. The Luminaries is a haunting and high-octane contemporary fantasy about the magic it takes to face your fears in a nightmare-filled forest, and the mettle required to face the secrets hiding in the dark corners of your own family. Hemlock Falls isn't like other towns. You won't find it on a map, your phone won't work here, and the forest outside town might just kill you. Only the Luminaries, a society of ancient guardians, stand between humanity and the nightmares of the forest that rise each night. So it sounds like a fairy tale inspired modern fantasy. It could be YA, it could be adult fiction, I'm not sure, I haven't read it yet, but I'm hoping to review it in January and it might well be my first review of this year. Another book that's out in January from Europa Editions is this Korean novel called Whale by Chung Myung-kwan. The translation into English is handled by Chi Young Kim, who translated Please Look After Mum, which is probably Kyung-Suk Shin's most successful novel. I remember hearing that that book took about 7 years to write, maybe more, and I really enjoyed it, and therefore the translation of this is in very good hands. This will likely be my first review of a book in translation into English this year, and as I said, it comes out in January from Europa Editions. And this is what the blurb says. A woman sells her daughter to a passing beekeeper for 2 jars of honey. A baby weighing 15 pounds is born in the depths of winter but named Girl of Spring. A storm brings down the roof of a ramshackle restaurant to reveal a hidden fortune. These are just some of the events that set Myung-kwan Chung's beautifully crafted wild world in motion. Set in a remote village in South Korea, Whale follows the lives of its linked characters. Gumbok, who has been chasing an indescribable thrill ever since she first saw a whale crest in the ocean, her mute daughter, Chun-hui, who communicates with elephants, and a one-eyed woman who controls honeybees with a whistle. So it's surrealist Korean fiction. Can't wait. This book comes out in May, As I said, there is no rhyme or reason, no order to any of this. This is Verge by Nadia Atia. I know absolutely nothing about this book, but it was sent to me from Scepter, and I'm going to read you the blurb. The day Rowena Murray was born, 250 starlings fell like stones from the sky. Ever since, she has been marked by death. First the visions, then her boyfriend died suddenly, now her father too. Salvation, Rowena is told, lies to the north, in Colcrith, where her grandmother can save her from the curse. Her mother's farmhand, a young Egyptian man named Halim, is to drive her. The trip isn't easy. Rowena is rebellious, spiky, and sees bad omens everywhere. Halim is reserved, quiet, and prefers to play by the rules. The land is mysterious and treacherous, with people who have married old traditions with new prejudices. The pair's battle of wills may yet develop into an alliance if they can only let their guards down and let the wild in. This sounds like a lot of fun. Again, possibly a kind of modern urban fantasy, and something to do with racial tensions and modern politics mixed in. I'm excited. Again, this comes out in May. This is another book that I, as of yet, know nothing about, but I was sent a review copy, and it sounds really intriguing. This is called A Good House for Children. It's by Kate Collins, who I've never read before. She might be a debut author, I'm not sure, and this is the blurb. The Reeve stands on the edge of the Dorset cliffs, awaiting its next inhabitants. Despite Orla's misgivings, her husband insists that this will be the perfect place to raise their two children. In 1976, Lydia moves to Dorset as a nanny for a family grieving their patriarch. She soon starts to hear and feel things that cannot be real, but her bereaved employer does not listen when Lydia tells her something is wrong. Separated by 40 years, Lydia and Orla realize that the longer they stay at the Reeve, the more deadly certain their need to keep the children safe from whatever lurks inside it. So it's gothic. I like gothic. I like gothic a lot, so I'm excited. Oh, this, by the way, comes out in March. Here's a book that will come out in February, The Witch in the Well by Camilla Bruce. I've never read Camilla Bruce before, but the publisher asked me if I wanted a copy of this. I read the blurb and said, hell yes, yes please, I would love one. And here's why. Once upon a time, the townspeople of F did something wicked. Local schoolteacher Catherine Evans has made writing the definitive account of what happened when Elizabeth Clark drowned in the well her life's work. Some don't want the past raked up, but Catherine is determined to shine a light on the shameful event, because Elizabeth was an innocent, shunned and ostracized by rumour mongers and ill-wishers, and someone has to speak up for her. And who better than Catherine, who has herself felt the sting and hurt of such whisperings? But then, a childhood friend returns to F. Elena is a successful author who's earned a certain celebrity. Now in search of a new subject, she announces her intention to write a book about the long-dead woman. And Elena has everything Catherine has not. A platform, connections, and no one seems to care that this book will be pure speculation, tainting Elizabeth's memory. Catherine is left with no option but to blunt her rival's pen. Before summer is over, one woman will be dead, and the other accused of murder. But is she guilty, or are there other forces at work? And who was Elizabeth Clark really? An innocent? A witch? Or something else entirely? Books about witches. Books about witchcraft. Yeah, I'm in. And this is the last of the books that I actually have with me, and then after this I'll be switching to my own research that I've done. This is Infinity Gate by M.R. Carey. He wrote a book called The Girl with All the Gifts a year or two ago, and I have not read that, even though every time I see it in a bookshop I go, ooh, that sounds good. And this is a massive sci-fi epic that comes out in March. The Pandemonium, a political and trading alliance of 1,000,000 worlds, except that they're really just the one world, Earth, in many different realities. And when an AI threat arises that could destroy everything the Pandemonium has built, they'll eradicate it by whatever means necessary, no matter the cost to human life. Scientist Hadiz Tambawal is looking for a solution to her own Earth's environmental collapse, when she stumbles across the secret of interdimensional travel. It could save everyone on her dying planet, but now she's walked into the middle of a war on a scale she can never dream of, and she needs to choose a side before it kills her. Okay, that's all the books I've got with me. Let's move on to my phone research. One book that I am incredibly excited for that I believe comes out in February is A Day of Fallen Night by Samantha Shannon. This is either a sequel to or a book set in the same world as The Priory of the Orange Tree, one of the great epic fantasy books. In some ways, I'm a little bit disappointed that this book exists, because Priory is a perfect standalone epic fantasy, and we don't get enough of those. The fantasy genre, publishers, editors, I don't know, people who deal with fantasy insist that fantasy has to be epic in terms of the number of books as well as the size of books. There has to be a trilogy or a series. But The Priory of the Orange Tree was a perfect standalone fantasy book, and I'm going to reread it before this sequel comes out. But now that this book is going to exist, of course I'm thrilled, because I want more of that world, so I'm not going to disagree with its existence. It just didn't have to exist, and I like the idea that we change the narrative around epic fantasy and make it so that you can just have the one book. That'll do. But still, I'm happy it exists and I can't wait to read it. So, yeah, Catch-22. And I'm gonna get it as soon as possible. Either a review copy or I'll be buying it day one. In a similar vein, we have The Shadow Cabinet by Juno Dawson. If you watched my best of year wrap-up list for 2022, you'll know that her first book in this series, Her Majesty's Royal Coven, made my top 3, I think? Was it my 3rd or 4th favourite book of the year? I love that book to bits, and the sequel is coming out later this year, I think during the summer, and it's called The Shadow Cabinet. This will be a continuation of Her Majesty's Royal Coven, which I believe is going to be a trilogy. So read Her Majesty's Royal Coven, and then you're going to want to check this out. I can't wait to get my hands on it. Likewise, in the world of dark academia, Hellbent is Leigh Bardugo's sequel, I believe, to The Ninth House. I liked The Ninth House. I thought it was a decent book. Not incredible, didn't change the world, but I liked it. It was very Secret History-esque, but far more fantastical and witchy and bleak and fun. Less literary, more genre fiction, basically. And Hellbent is the follow-up to that book, and I didn't know there would be a follow-up, and as soon as I heard there was going to be, I was in. I really liked that. I might, again, maybe reread The Ninth House, and then read Hellbent. Next up is the newest book by Jennifer Saint, who wrote Ariadne and then Electra. I loved Ariadne, I did a video on it, great book, and Electra I have on my shelf and I'm probably going to read it next, like I might start it tomorrow or the next day at the time of recording. And her latest book, another feminist retelling of Greek mythology, is Atlanta. This book comes out in April, and this is what the blurb says. When a daughter is born to the king of Arcadia, she brings only disappointment. Left exposed on a mountainside, the defenseless infant Atlanta is left to the mercy of a passing mother bear, and raised alongside the cubs under the protective eye of the goddess Artemis, my favourite sexy goddess. Swearing that she will prove her worth alongside the famed heroes of Greece, Atlanta leaves her forest to join Jason's band of Argonauts, but can she carve out her own place in the legends in a world made for men? Jennifer Saint is one of those authors that's doing great things with Greek mythology, retelling things from a feminist perspective. I enjoyed Ariadne, I'm sure I'm going to enjoy Electra, you'll find out very soon, and so I'm going to pick up Atlanta. She's great, and she's churning out these books once a year. I wonder how much ground she's going to cover. Will she stop after 3? Will she do something else? Whatever happens after Atlanta, I'm probably going to be on board. One of the great British authors of our time is Max Porter. His debut short novel, Grief is the Thing with Feathers, is a masterpiece, and his follow-up, Lanny, was also something incredibly special, and this year we're getting his newest book, Shy. This is the story of a few strange hours in the life of a troubled teenage boy. He is wandering into the night, listening to the voices in his head, his teachers, his parents, the people he's hurt, and the people who are trying to love him. He is escaping Last Chance, a home for very disturbed young men, and walking into the haunted space between his night terrors, his past, and the heavy question for his future. This sounds great. This is Max Porter. It's going to be amazing, I have no doubt, and it comes out in April. This is probably the only book on this whole list that I am interested in purely from the title and the cover art. It's gorgeous, and it comes out really soon in January. This is Godkiller by Hannah Kaner. Kissen's family were killed by zealots of a fire god. Now she makes a living killing gods and enjoys it. That is until she finds a god she cannot kill. Skedi, a god of white lies, has somehow bound himself to a young noble, and they are both on the run from unknown assassins. Joined by a disillusioned knight on a secret quest, they must travel to the ruined city of Blenraden, where the last of the wild gods reside, to each beg a favour. Pursued by demons and in the midst of burgeoning civil war, they will face a reckoning. Something is rotting at the heart of their world, and only they can be the ones to stop it. So it's fantasy. It sounds like a really fun fantasy book that reminds me of Jason Aaron's run on the Thor comics with Gore the God Butcher. So this is going to be fun. You might have to forgive me for this next one, because this is the newest Laura Purcell novel, and Laura Purcell is one of my favourite horror writers of all time. I've loved every book she's ever written, which right now stands at 4, and this is her 5th book, which I think comes out in February. It's called The Whispering Muse, and I don't want to read the blurb. I kind of want to just pick this book up and go in completely blind. So I'm not going to tell you anything about it because I don't want to know, but Laura Purcell is an incredible writer of horror fiction. My favourite book of hers is The Corset. If you haven't read it, please check out The Corset. It's incredible. But I'll be picking this up no matter what, and I'll be reviewing it no matter what. I love Laura Purcell, and I just don't want to know what happens. I don't even want to read the blurb. I'm going in blind, so I'm not telling you anything about it. Let's move on. I've mentioned many times that I'm a minor Shakespeare fanatic, and my second favourite Shakespeare play is Macbeth, and here is a book called Birnam Wood. So of course I'm interested. Birnam Wood is on the move. 5 years ago, Mira Bunting founded a guerrilla gardening group, Birnam Wood. An undeclared, unregulated, sometimes criminal, sometimes philanthropic gathering of friends. This activist collective plants crops wherever no one will notice. On the sides of roads, in forgotten parks, neglected backyards. For years, this group has struggled to break even. Then, Mira stumbles on an answer, a way to finally set the group up for the long term. A landslide has closed the Corowai Pass, cutting off the town of Thorndyke. Natural disaster has created an opportunity, a sizable farm seemingly abandoned. But Mira's not the only one interested in Thorndyke. Robert Lemoyne, the enigmatic American billionaire, has snatched it up to build his end times bunker, or so he tells Mira when he catches her on the property. Intrigued by Mira, Birnam Wood, and their entrepreneurial spirit, he suggests that they work this land. But can they trust him? The blurb actually goes on for a little bit longer, but that's a long blurb. I'm just going to stop there. I am intrigued by this book for many, many reasons. Let's see some reviews. Let's see how it goes. I am always excited by the books published by Charco Press, who focus exclusively on Latin American fiction translated into English. I will be probably reading and reviewing everything they bring out in 2023, but these 2 books really have my attention. The first is Of Cattle and Men by Ana Paula Maya, translated by Zoe Perry. In a landscape worthy of Cormac McCarthy, the river runs septic with blood. Edgar Wilson makes a sign of the cross on the forehead of a cow, then stuns it with a mallet. He does this over and over again as the stun operator at Sen Hormilo's slaughterhouse. Reliable, responsible, quietly dispatching cows and following orders wherever that may take him. It's important to calm the cows, especially now that they seem so unsettled. They have begun to run in panic into walls and over cliffs. Bronco Gill, the foreman, thinks it's a jaguar or a wild boar. Edgar Wilson has other suspicions. But what is certain is there is something in this desolate corner of Brazil driving men and animals to murder and madness. And the other book is A Little Luck by Claudia Pinheiro, translated by Francis Riddle. After 20 years, a woman returns to the suburban Argentina that she had fled to escape a dreadful accident, a sense of guilt, and social condemnation leaving her son behind. But the woman who returns is not the same. She doesn't look the same. Her voice is different. She doesn't have the same name. After 2 decades spent in the United States, this damaged woman has rebuilt her life. Will those who knew her even recognize her? Will he recognize her? The next book is kind of the same situation as Laura Purcell, and that is The End of August by Yu Miri, translated by Morgan Giles. Yu Miri's first book, translated by Morgan Giles, was Tokyo Ueno Station, one of my favourite Japanese novels of all time, an incredible, angry, socio-political, socialist novel that I think about almost on a daily basis to this day. I don't really want to know much about this next one. I need it as soon as possible. I am thrilled that it's coming out. Morgan's translation is incredible. She's amazing. She's a friend of mine. I am absolutely thrilled. This is all really, really exciting stuff, and I've had to wait too long for a Yu Miri book because we need more of her stuff all the time, every single day. More Japanese socialist literature. Oh, yes. More Yu Miri and Morgan Giles all the time. Thank you. Yet another book that I don't really want to know much about, even though I have read a tiny little snippet from it, is Brainworms by Alison Rumfitt. Her debut novel, Tell Me I'm Worthless, is one of the best horror novels in existence. It's one of my favourite books of all time. I have talked about it to death. I've met Alison a whole bunch of times, I've interviewed her, she's great, and her next novel, Brainworms, is being published once again by Cypher Press, and I think it comes out in August or September, and you're going to need to pay attention to Brainworms, because she is slowly changing the world of modern horror fiction, especially queer horror fiction. She is something very special, and the fact that she's so young just pisses me off. She's incredibly talented, and Brainworms is going to shake the world, I'm sure of it. Another Korean book that I am incredibly excited about coming out in April this year is The Spectres of Algeria. This is written by Hwang Yo-jung and translated by Jung Ye-won. It's published by Honford Star, if I didn't already say that, and Honford Star are incredible people, good friends of mine. They publish very subversive and exciting stuff from East Asia. A group of dramatists that commit what was a subversive act during the South Korean military dictatorship of the 20th century, distributing copies of Karl Marx's only surviving play, The Spectres of Algeria. The consequences of the brutal crackdown by the authorities would set the directions of the lives of two young children of the group's members, Yul and Jing. Despite the deep connection between them, Yul would open up an alteration shop in Seoul and Jing would move to Europe. But now, Chol-soo, a dissatisfied employee at the community theatre, is unearthing the truth about the Spectres of Algeria, and is questioning whether the human situation is as absurd as the play asserts. Korean literature, Honford Star, Marxism. I'm in. This video is going to be way too long. I am realizing that as I'm filming it. So here are 5 Japanese novels in translation that you can go away and look up, and I am very, very, very excited about, but I will talk for way too long about each of these if I'm not careful, so I'm just going to run through them now. The Forest Brims Over by Ayase Maru. Kappa by Ryunosuke Akutagawa. Mild Vertigo by Mieko Kanai. The Millhouse Murders by Yukito Ayatsuji, author of The Decagon House Murders, my favourite Japanese murder mystery novel ever. And The North Light by Hideo Yokohama. Go check those out. Next is Chain Gang All Stars. This is the debut novel by Nanakwame Adjei-Brenyah. He wrote my favourite short story ever. A few years ago, he rocked the world with an incredible short story collection called Friday Black, and the first story in that collection is my favourite short story ever, an incredible, angry, and painful piece of Black American fiction. Oh my word. If you've never read Friday Black, go get it, go read it, especially if you love short stories and especially if you love Black American fiction. But Nanakwame Adjei-Brenyah finally has his debut novel coming out this year, and we need to get excited for it. We're nearly at the end, but this is another very exciting one, The Glutton by A.K. Blakemore. Her debut novel, The Manningtree Witches, is another favourite of mine. This is probably my favourite piece of historical fiction, especially historical British fiction ever, and she has her next book finally coming out this year, and it's called The Glutton, which is a terrifying title in a lot of ways. I cannot wait to see what she brings us this year. About 2 or 3 years ago, a lot of people were pretty shaken by Tender is the Flesh by Agustina Bazterrica, and yeah, I was too. I wrote a review of it, I loved that book, it was disgusting and brilliant, and now we have her collection of short stories coming this year called 19 Claws and a Black Bird, translated from the Spanish by Sarah Moses. I'm confident that this is going to be more disgusting, frightening, scary, probably eco-related stuff. If you have a strong stomach, Tender is the Flesh is an incredible novel that I urge you to read. If you'd rather dip your toes into her work and scan a few short stories, then you're going to want to check this book out when it comes out later this year. But Agustina Bazterrica is an amazing Argentinian author, and this is probably going to be up there in my best of year list. I can already feel it, and it's January. This one I can find so little information about, which kind of bugs me, but it's the new novel by French author David Diop, who won the Booker International Prize last year or the year before, I can never remember, with his World War I tiny little amazing heart-wrenching novella thingy, At Night All Blood is Black, which I did a video on if you want to go check it out. At Night All Blood is Black was something. It really was an incredible novel that deserved to win the prize, and I'm glad it did. And his new book coming out, translated into English, published I think again by Pushkin Press, is called The Door of No Return. And scanning through, I can't even find the name of the translator, let alone a blurb. Sorry, but there is a new David Diop book coming this year, so we should be excited for that. Galley Beggar Press is one of my favourite publishers coming out of the UK, and one of their new books that's coming out this year is a sequel to Animal Farm by George Orwell called Beasts of England by Adam Biles. That's all I know about it. I'm sure I'll be able to grab a review copy and do a review of it, but a sequel to Animal Farm called Beasts of England? We're going to need to read this. This should be a really exciting one. And Galley Beggar just, they don't miss when it comes to publishing incredible fiction. There's your 30. This video must be frighteningly long. I am sorry, but also I really, really hope you're as excited for all of these incredible books as I am. I did say this is not an exhaustive list. I actually have like 5 books at the back of my head that I'm also excited about that I didn't mention, but this video would go on forever. I didn't even talk about each of these books as much as I wanted to, honestly, especially the 5 Japanese books that I just rattled off. I'm sorry about that. Anyway, this should be a great year for literature. Let's get excited. Subscribe for books.